Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to the National E-Learning Center podcast series about digital credentials to promote trusted online learning for all. Today, credentials play a critical role in recognizing the competencies earned by the learners, especially with the phenomenal growth of online learning for upskilling and reskilling. It is essential for us to understand the role of digital credentials in the life learning process and ecosystem. So, in this special podcast series, we will explore aspects of credentials from innovation, standards, and policymaking, and their impact on bridging between the labor market demand and supply from the perspective of academia and industry. Today, we are thrilled to be joined by a special guest, Dr. Braxton, Senior Director for Digital Innovation at Bowdoin College. So, without further ado, let's welcome our guest to the podcast. Welcome, Dr. Braxton. Please tell our listeners more about yourself.
Sure. So, as you mentioned, I'm the Senior Director for Digital Innovation at Bowdoin College. I've served as a task force co-lead for the Open Badges Extensions for Education initiative, which was, the purpose was to identify new extensions for the Open Badges 2.0 specification. And I also co-chair the Open Badges 3.0 working group and am a member of the Comprehensive Learning Record Working Group. And my current role is co-chair of the Digital Credentials Innovation Leadership Network. So One Ed Tech is kind of my second job.
Thank you. We understand that your focus is on providing online learning and teaching operational vision and strategy. How do you see online learning and teaching in comparison to face-to-face learning and teaching?
Yeah, so I was brought to Bowdoin because of my experience in online teaching and learning at my previous institution, University of Maryland, Baltimore County. And Bowdoin is one of those schools that was traditionally in person. So that expertise was to help to identify effective practices for online teaching and learning. And I think that you all know that a huge piece of any effective teaching, whether it's face-to-face or online, is a clear, direct assessments that are tied to outcomes and giving students the opportunity to engage with content and activities and experiences that allow them to demonstrate the outcomes, right? So all of this is very related to what we're going to talk about in digital credentialing too, and why it's important. The key thing about either of those is that you need to allow students to be able to engage with each other, with themselves, with the materials, and facilitate as an instructor to help them to overcome the gaps where they need to as they're acquiring this new knowledge. Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah.
From your perspective, what is the importance of recognizing learning, achievements, and skills with digital credentials?
Yeah, so I think what we're seeing is that employers are also now really wanting to be able to have new employees or potential employees articulate their skills and demonstrate them. And so what digital credentials do is they make it really obvious through the metadata that travels with them, all of the information, the criteria, the descriptions, and all of that other information you can put into the credential of what the students can, what they know, what they can do, and what they can articulate to you. And so I think what we've found in working with students is that the digital credentials now give them a way to rethink these skills that they're learning throughout their experiences in college, whether it's in the classroom or outside the classroom, and being able to think beyond the specific context in which they earned that skill or competency and how they can then transfer it or apply it to other situations or scenarios. And so while students always take classes and learn things, if you sometimes ask them, what did you get out of this class that's going to help you in your future? Like, I don't know. I took it because it was a required course.
Yeah.
You know, the credentials really put it in their faces of this is the skill you acquired. And you can now reflect on how that skill can be transferred into a career.
Exactly.
So I think
yes.
that's really a strength of digital credentialing. It's not that we're doing anything different. We're just making it easier to identify specific competencies and skills through the credentials.
So, how can we differentiate between the importance of a micro-credential and the full academic degree?
Yeah, so an academic degree, the purpose is really for a learner to gain mastery in a specific discipline through a variety of experiences across a long time span, right? So they're going to get very introductory access to a specific topic, and they're going to build and scaffold their knowledge over time in a more longitudinal approach to becoming an expert in a field or an area. Whereas a micro-credential, the goal of those is to provide a much shorter in duration opportunity, learning opportunity for someone to gain a certain level of competency. It may be an introductory kind of level of knowledge, depending on the type of micro-credential. It could be one that gives them more expertise in a field that they're already part of, that may be expanding or changing or evolving, and allowing them to upskill on the new skills required for that. Or maybe an opportunity for someone to try out a new field, and they're thinking about changing careers. And so they have an opportunity to experience a new discipline in a much shorter period of time, and to determine if it's something they're interested in or want to pursue, even possibly a 4-year degree in. So I think they both have their spaces, and I think that there are opportunities for people to have both, right? It just depends on where they are in their career or in their learning journey.
So, what is your recommendation for educational institutions in general to adopt digital credentials?
Well, everything's got to be thoughtful and deliberate, right? You've got to figure out what problem are you trying to solve? Who's the audience that you're trying to reach? And then what do you want the outcome of that to be, right? So you don't just create a credential because, hey, we have a cool club and let's just make the cool club credential, right? What are the students doing in that that's of value to them and a value to consumers of that credential? So that's the first piece. Be really strategic about the why, because you're also going to have to convince people of the so what, right? I think a lot of this is new to everyone. And so being able to tell the story of why we need credentials and what value it brings to students, the consumers, and others who are going to interact and engage and ingest those credentials is really important. And not trying to do it in a vacuum. This is one of those things that it requires a lot of people to be involved. The content creators, right? The people who are going to assess the students' mastery of a particular skill. If you're trying to get it on a transcript, the registrar, IT, will be instrumental and critical in setting up the systems that are going to allow you to share and distribute those credentials. So you've got to really identify that key group of stakeholders that can help you to get this work done. And you were in the workshop the other day. I
Yes.
said, you need a kind of a credential czar, right? and that person is really to set some guardrails about what the expectations for quality and design and consistency are, so that when people see your credentials, they will believe and understand that there's trust that they can have in it, that there's quality, and that you've been very deliberate in how you've categorized the levels of achievement through each competency. So, you gotta really have a strong foundation. And I always tell people you need to have a champion, somebody who is in a position of power within your organization, who is going to support you in getting all of these stakeholders involved in supporting the initiatives.
What are the challenges?
Well, faculty play a big piece in this, and faculty are busy, and they're going to tell you they don't have time for one more thing. I think the important thing when you're doing this type of work is to show them that you're already teaching these students these skills. It's embedded in your courses. We're not saying add to, we're saying this is a different way of packaging and representing a specific competency that they've gained in your course that is really meaningful to people outside, right? It's really demonstrating a transferable skill that employers are going to want to know. In addition to the fact that they took your course, that one skill of critical thinking or whatever it is something that's key to industry. And so it's not an either or to the degree, it's an add, and it's an improvement for the students to their entire, we'll call it portfolio of learning, because it really calls out specific skills that will be important to them.
I personally have a question.
Yeah.
I'm listening, and everyone's talking about critical thinking.
Yes.
It's like the biggest.
Yes, it's one of those transferable skills that people are like, yeah, we need to make sure students understand the process.
What is critical thinking, really?
Critical thinking is, I give you a problem. How are you going to analyze that problem, dissect it, determine how you're going to address it? And then once you come up with a solution, how are you going to convey that to people? So it's really being able to take a problem, think about it, think about the audience that you're trying to help solve a problem, and then coming up with solutions. And oftentimes that's critical thinking with others, because we don't work in a vacuum when you're employed, right? So employers want to know that you can, if you're given a problem, you can think about it, come up with some possible solutions, brainstorm, and you can do it with other people.
Yes. That's important.
Yeah, it's an important skill. That and collaboration. Often you see employers wanting to know where did you collaborate? Where did you lead a group in solving a problem? And really, all of that is floating around critical
And
thinking.
And it's sometimes difficult to identify
Yeah.
how you really are a critical thinker
Yes.
when it comes to, the real life,
Right,
real world.
which is why I think, we talked about it in the workshop, those value rubrics where there's a definition of critical thinking and some criteria, and making sure that people know that's how you define it. And it's those frameworks that are defining these skills that we need for people to adopt, so that when I say critical thinking, you say critical thinking, we're talking about the same thing.
Sometimes it's different to
And
other
if it is different,
institutions.
and if it is, that's great, because our metadata and our badge is going to tell us what our definition is.
Dr. Braxton, we noticed in the National E-Learning Center this issue. Therefore, I would like to highlight an initiative that we are working on unifying the e-learning terminologies. And actually, we published the first batch of terminologies. So going back into the digital badging, I would like to know, what are the important things to be mentioned in these digital badges you're talking about?
Yeah, so I think the metadata in which you are defining all these terms, right? So everyone is on the same page with what you mean. I think that's critical. So in the digital badges, where you can describe what the badge is for, what the criteria the learner had to meet to earn the badge, were all of those areas where you can really explicitly define those terms within the metadata that travels with the badge is very important. I think there are so many people working on this work right now. It's kind of like the Tower of Babel when you see how people are defining things. So in order for us to make sure we're all speaking the same language, we really need to provide that level of detail as we create these micro-credentials. The one thing I want to be clear on is that when we're talking about digital credentials, we're really referring to micro-credentials. I think one of the things that's also confusing to people is they hear people use the term digital badge or digital credential. We're really talking about how do you provide a container for the micro-credentials to travel. Right? So the badge is just an artifact that can be associated with a micro-credential. So digital credentials are really micro-credentials, and the digital piece is just talking about how it is distributed and transmitted from one place to the other. It's in a digital format. So I hope that helps to clarify what we mean when we say digital credentials. We're really talking about micro-credentials that can be represented using a digital badge.
Thank you, Dr. Braxton. Thanks for listening to the National E-Learning Center podcast with your host, El Hanouf. We hope you enjoyed our episode about recognizing online learning and teaching. To hear more about digital credentials, join us on our next episode. As always, you can visit our website, nelc.gov.sa, to know more about our news, and don't forget to check our resources page. That's it for now. See you next time.